One of the strangest things I've observed over the years is how making more money rarely makes people feel more secure. You'd think it would. You'd think doubling your income would mean you feel twice as safe, twice as free. But it doesn't work that way. Not for most people. What happens instead is something quieter, something most people don't even notice until they're stuck in it. They start making more money, and almost immediately, without even deciding to, they start spending more. Not on purpose. Not because they sat down and made a plan. It just happens, slowly, naturally. Like water finding its level, they move to a nicer place. They get a nicer car. They start eating at better restaurants. They upgrade their vacations. They buy nicer clothes. And none of it feels excessive in the moment. None of it feels like a big deal. It all feels reasonable. It all feels like something they've earned, something they deserve. And maybe they have earned it. Maybe they do deserve it. I'm not here to judge what people spend their money on, but what I've noticed, what I've seen play out over and over, is that this pattern, it costs more than money. It costs something deeper, something harder to measure. It costs peace of mind. Because here's what happens. When you upgrade your lifestyle, you don't just spend more money. You create new expectations, new baselines, new definitions of normal. And once you've adjusted to that new normal, once you've gotten used to it, going back feels impossible. It feels like failure, like moving backward, like admitting something went wrong. So you're stuck. You have to maintain it. You have to keep earning at that level or higher, because if your income drops even a little, you're not just losing money, you're losing the life you've built, the identity you've created, the standard you've set for yourself and shown to everyone around you. And that's the trap. That's the psychological cost nobody talks about. You think you're building freedom, but what you're actually building is a more expensive prison, one where the bars are made of expectations instead of steel, where you can't leave because you've convinced yourself this is just who you are now. I've seen this happen to people at every income level. It's not just the wealthy. It's not just people making millions. I've seen it happen to people making $50,000 a year, $100,000, $500,000. It doesn't matter. The pattern is the same. Make more, spend more, need more, feel trapped. And the really interesting thing is the people caught in this cycle, they often don't realize it. They think they're fine. They think they're successful. They point to their house, their car, their vacations, and they say, look, I'm doing well. And by external measures, they are. But internally, they're stressed. They're anxious. They're worried about money, even though they're making more than they ever have, because lifestyle. Inflation doesn't just raise your expenses. It raises your baseline for feeling okay. It raises the stakes. It makes you dependent on a level of income that requires constant effort, constant performance, constant vigilance. You can't relax. You can't take your foot off the gas, because if you do, if you slow down even a little, everything you built feels fragile. I remember talking to someone years ago, a friend who'd done really well, built a successful company, started making serious money. And I watched him over the course of a few years completely change his lifestyle. Bigger house, fancy cars, private schools for the kids, country club, the works. And one day we're talking and he mentions how stressed he is, how he can't sleep, how he's worried about the business. And I'm thinking, the business is doing fine. It's growing. It's profitable. What's the problem? But then he starts talking about his expenses, and I realize his expenses have grown faster than his income, not by a lot, but enough. Enough that he's feeling pressure, enough that he can't afford a bad year, can't afford to slow down, can't afford to take risks that might hurt short-term income, even if they're good. Long-term moves. He'd built this life that required him to keep performing at a peak level indefinitely. And the weight of that, you could see it on him. He wasn't enjoying the nice house or the fancy cars. He was just working to maintain them, working to avoid losing them. And that's not freedom. That's the opposite. And here's the thing. He couldn't really go back. I mean, technically he could. He could downsize. He could sell the big house, get a normal car, pull the kids from private school. But psychologically, that felt impossible. That felt like admitting failure. Like telling everyone, including himself, that he couldn't hack it, that he'd been living beyond his means, that he'd made a mistake. So he was stuck in a lifestyle that required constant stress to maintain. And the money he was making, the money that should have brought security, it just brought more pressure, more anxiety, more fear of losing it all. I think about this a lot because it's so common and it's so unnecessary. Because the truth is, the things that actually make people happy, the things that actually bring peace of mind, they don't cost that much. They don't require a huge house or an expensive car. They don't require impressing other people. What brings peace is security, options, the ability to say no, the ability to walk away from something that's not working without worrying about making the mortgage payment, the ability to take a risk, try something new, bet on yourself, because you're not leveraged to the hilt just to maintain your current lifestyle. But when you inflate your lifestyle, you give all of that up. You trade real security for the appearance of success. And the appearance of success, it doesn't keep you warm at night. It doesn't help you sleep. It doesn't give you freedom. It just gives you more to worry about. And I get it. I understand the appeal. When you start making more money, it feels good to spend it. It feels like validation, like proof that you've made it, like a reward for all the hard work. And there's nothing wrong with enjoying your success, nothing wrong with spending money on things that genuinely improve your life. But there's a difference between thoughtful spending and lifestyle inflation. Thoughtful spending is intentional. You decide what actually matters to you and you spend money on that. You say no to things that don't matter. You keep your expenses well below your income. You build a buffer. You maintain flexibility. Lifestyle inflation is different. It's automatic. It's unconscious. It's keeping up with the people around you. It's upgrading because you can, not because you should. It's letting your expenses rise to meet your income and then beyond it until you're stretched thin even though you're making good money. And the psychological cost of that, it's enormous because once you're in that pattern, you start making decisions based on fear instead of opportunity. You take the job that pays more, even if you hate it because you need the money. You stay in a situation that's not working because you can't afford to leave. You say yes to things you don't want to do because you need to maintain your income. Your life stops being about what you want and starts being about what you need to maintain, what you need to protect, what you need to keep from falling apart. And that's exhausting. That's the opposite of what money is supposed to do. Money is supposed to give you freedom, but lifestyle inflation takes it away. I've always lived below my means, way below, and people sometimes find that strange. They look at how I live and they think, why? You could afford so much more. Why drive an old car? Why live in a modest house? Why not enjoy it? But I am enjoying it. I'm enjoying the freedom. I'm enjoying not worrying about money. I'm enjoying being able to make decisions based on what's interesting or meaningful rather than what pays the most. I'm enjoying the peace that comes from knowing that if everything went wrong tomorrow, I'd still be fine, more than fine. And that peace, you can't buy that. You can't get that by spending more. You get it by spending less, by keeping your life simple, by not needing very much, by building a gap between what you make and what you spend that's so wide you never have to worry about. But most people don't do that. Most people, as soon as they start making more, they start spending more. And they tell themselves, tea's fine. They tell themselves they're being smart about it. They tell themselves they deserve it. And maybe they do, but deserve has nothing to do with whether it's wise, because the lifestyle you choose, it doesn't just affect your expenses. It affects your psychology. It affects how you feel every day. It affects how much freedom you have, how much stress you carry, how much you worry about the future. And those effects, they compound, just like money compounds, except instead of building wealth, you're building pressure. I've seen people work themselves to death maintaining a lifestyle they don't even enjoy. They've got the big house, but they're never home. They've got the fancy car, but they're too stressed to enjoy driving it. They've got the expensive vacations, but they're checking email the whole time because they can't afford to disconnect. And if you ask them, are you happy? Most of them would say yes, because they've convinced themselves that having those things means they're successful, that having those things means they've made it. But success that requires constant stress to maintain, that's not really success. That's just a more expensive form of struggle. And here's what's really insidious about it. Lifestyle inflation is sneaky. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens gradually, one upgrade at a time, one decision at a time, and each individual decision seems reasonable. seems small, seems like no big deal. You get a raise, you move to a nicer apartment, seems reasonable. You get a promotion, you buy a nicer car, makes sense. You get a bonus, you upgrade your vacation. Why not? And none of these things in isolation is a problem. But the cumulative effect is that you've built a life that costs way more than it used to. And you've built expectations that are way higher than they used to be. And now you need to maintain that. You need to keep earning at that level or higher. Because the idea of going back, the idea of downgrading, the idea of admitting that maybe you went too far, that feels impossible. That feels like losing, and nobody wants to lose. So you keep going, you keep pushing, you keep working harder to maintain a lifestyle that's supposed to be the reward for working hard. You're on a treadmill that keeps speeding up and you can't get off because you've built your entire life around the assumption that you'll keep running at this pace forever. And the stress of that, the psychological weight of that, it affects everything. It affects your relationships. It affects your health. It affects your ability to take risks or make changes. It affects your peace of mind. You might look successful on the outside, but on the inside, you're just tired, anxious, trapped. I think the saddest part is that most people don't realize there's another way. They don't realize that you can make good money and still live modestly, that you can be successful and still keep your life simple. You can have security without needing to impress anyone, that you can build real wealth instead of the appearance of wealth. Because real wealth isn't about how much you spend. It's about how much you keep, how much you save, how much buffer you have, how many options you have, how much freedom you have. And those things, they come from spending less, not more. But that's not the message most people hear. Most people hear that success means upgrading, that making more means spending more, that you should enjoy it, treat yourself, live a little. And sure, that sounds good, but what they don't tell you is the cost, not the financial cost, the psychological cost. They don't tell you that every upgrade creates a new baseline that's harder to maintain. They don't tell you that every increase in spending creates a new level of stress. They don't tell you that the treadmill speeds up the more you give into it. They don't tell you that at some point you'll wake up and realize you're working to maintain a life you don't even remember choosing. And by then it's hard to change, not impossible, but hard. Because changing means admitting you've been doing it wrong. Changing means going backward, at least temporarily. Changing means letting go of things you've gotten used to, things that feel like part of your identity now. But the alternative is spending the rest of your life trapped by your own choices, trapped by expenses you thought would make you happy, but really just made you busy. Trapped by expectations you thought would make you successful, but really just made you stressed. And I look at that and I think, what a waste. What a waste of money. What a waste of time. What a waste of energy. All of it going toward maintaining a lifestyle that doesn't even deliver what it promises, that doesn't actually make you happier or more secure or more free, because freedom doesn't come from having more. It comes from needing less. It comes from building a life that doesn't require you to perform at peak capacity every single day just to keep it going. It comes from having enough margin that you can breathe, that you can make mistakes, that you can take time off, that you can say no. And that's what lifestyle inflation takes away. It takes away your margin. It takes away your breathing room. It takes away your ability to choose. And it does it so gradually, so naturally that most people don't even notice until it's too late, until they're so deep in it that getting out feels impossible. But it's not impossible. It's just uncomfortable. It requires being honest with yourself about what you actually need versus what you think you need. It requires letting go of the idea that more is always better. It requires being okay with living below your means, even when you could afford more. And most people won't do that. Most people will keep inflating their lifestyle every time they get a raise. They'll keep upgrading and upgrading until they're maxed out, stressed out, and wondering why making more money didn't make them feel more secure. But some people will figure it out. Some people will realize that the game they're playing isn't worth winning, that the psychological cost of lifestyle inflation is way higher than the temporary pleasure of having nicer things. That real security comes from simplicity, not complexity, from spending less, not more. And those people will have something most others don't. They'll have peace. They'll have freedom. They'll have options. They'll have the ability to make decisions based on what they want, not what they need to maintain their lifestyle. And that's worth more than any big house or fancy car or expensive vacation. That's the thing lifestyle inflation can never give you, no matter how much you spend. Because you can't buy freedom by spending money. You buy it by not spending money, by keeping your life simple enough that money stops being something you worry about and starts being something you have. That's the real lesson, the one most people learn too late or never learn at all.